Views and opinions expressed within the following program are solely those of the individual. These views and opinions do not necessarily represent those of Shaw TV.
Hey Calgary, I'm Kevin Chorney. Today is November 29th, and this is Calgary Now. Albertans are no stranger to oil wells, but would you be more concerned if you could look out your bedroom window and see one? Royal Oak residents are currently considering this possibility as Kaiser Exploration is looking to drill a sweet oil well behind the Walmart located in the community. Residents have numerous concerns, including the effects on traffic and the environment, evacuation plans in the case of an emergency, as well as fears of air, water, and noise pollution. The Energy Resource Conservation Board states that sweet oil wells would not pose a health threat as the well would not be deep enough for sour gas to be expelled. Currently, the whole thing is on hold until an inquiry into the current policy for oil and gas projects within city limits is completed. Can the province come up with a compromise between our main industry and residents' concerns? Okay, so a little background for this most contentious issue. Kaiser Exploration was granted ERCB approval to drill a sweet oil well just outside the community of Royal Oak in Calgary's northwest. Drilling was set to begin this past summer. However, following strong opposition from area residents, plans for the well site were put on hold by the Alberta government until the Alberta Urban Policy Study is completed by the Energy Department. Kaiser and the ERCB say health and safety risks are virtually nil, but residents are not convinced and cite a slew of fears and concerns. Enough, in fact, to bring out 200 sign-waving, rain-enduring residents in protest this past summer. I'm sitting down with Kaiser Exploration's Ned Beattie and Ward Sutherland, the president of Rocky Ridge Royal Oak Community Association, as well as Dale Hodges, Ward 1 Alderman, in just a moment here. As always, we encourage you to phone us, 403-539-6710 to join the discussion, or send us a tweet at Calgary Now Show. Stay with us.
I think the NIMBYism involving drilling a street well within the city limits isn't really that big of a deal. You can look at Los Angeles County or Houston, Texas, or Oklahoma City or anywhere else that might have certain things like this in and around their major metropolitan centers. It's not a high-pressure gas well. It's not a sour gas well. It's just a regular oil derrick. There are high schools in Los Angeles County and surrounding areas with oil derricks in their parking lots. There are probably shopping malls with the same thing. I just don't understand why this is becoming such a huge deal. Obviously, there's environmental risks everywhere, but there's a risk of me getting into an accident with a propane truck on the way home from filming this, probably more than there is having a leak from a sweet oil derrick right behind a Walmart.
Welcome back. Let's get right to it. Now, we've got an image here of the proposed well site. Guys, the way I want to do this, I'm going to ask a few questions about residents' concerns. I'd like to tackle them one at a time if we could. Ned, pardon me, Ward, I'll start with you. Now, residents are talking a lot about the potential for sour gas expulsion and the health risks that could be associated with that. How great of a concern is that amongst people in your area?
Well, Kevin, first of all, let me thank you for inviting me. In the community of Rocky Ridge and Royal Oak, there's 17,000 residents. I'd like to make it very clear that many of these residents work in the oil and gas industry. And we certainly support the oil and gas industry. What we don't support is the irresponsible regulations that the ERCB has concerning Directive 56. And that directive basically stands, when it was created, made for an oil well to be drilled in the middle of an oil, basically a wheat field. All it states is, wherever the well is going to be drilled, within 100 meters of that well in a radius, that you're a stakeholder. Outside of that 100 meters, you're not a stakeholder. So as it stands right now, the Kaiser well is on Crown land. It's in an unusual situation where a few hundred meters away, there's city property, there's businesses and banks and grocery stores, restaurants that have patios, and then residents within 400 meters. And we're not considered a stakeholder. So as far as they're concerned, if everything is safe within that 100 meters, they've done their job. Everything peripheral to drilling the well is not their concern.
So sour gas, a concern?
Well, you know, it could be sour gas. I don't even like to speculate of where it could go. That's really not the issue. The issue is, it's surprising they don't even have an urban drilling policy. To have an old policy just blanket for the entire province, no matter where you're going to drill, I think is really irresponsible, because there's many factors to be taken in consideration with the city, the zoning, whether it's the commercial area, the safety, the transportation, how close it is.
So we can, and I'd like to touch on each one of those things. Ned, I'll give you a chance to rebuttal.
Well, one is that Kaiser would not, nor would the ERCB, ever permit an unsafe operation in the city or out of the city. They don't distinguish between city people, suburban people, acreage holders, farmers. They're all Albertans. And so the rules are written to ensure the safety of Albertans. And we're quite certain that we could safely drill a sweet oil well at this location. We're quite certain we will not encounter sour gas. We've always said from the beginning, if we did encounter sour gas, we would never produce it from that location.
The ERCB is of the same opinion, that sour gas is not a threat. Why is that? I understand it has to do with the depth of the well.
Correct. And we know very certainly from wells all around the city and within the city, at certain depths, certain formations have sweet oil, certain formations have sweet gas, and as you go deeper, you can run into formations with sour oil and sour gas. This is very well known and established. The ERCB has an entire group that does nothing but verify that there will be or will not be sour gas, and if there will be sour gas, they take it very seriously and do worst case scenarios. We actually did a risk analysis as if we were going to drill a sour gas well to see what would be the impact, how big a radius would it be. The radius is about 11 meters. It's not even 100 meters. So the 100 meters, in terms of public safety, is vastly larger. The other thing I'd like to point out, you mentioned in the start there, was that you said, you know, how would you like to see an oil well? You know, have an oil well right next to you. Well, this particular site we've chosen is not visible to any resident. It's more than 200 meters from the back side of Walmart. Walmart and the forensic center and the correctional center and trees block it from any residential view at all. And I would submit probably hearing, and certainly no odors will get off, because it's not allowed. You're not allowed to have odors get off your lease. So again, there's nothing wrong with this site within the rules, and I would submit that the rules more than adequately protect the public, not just in this instance, but in general.
I want to talk about the city water. This is, I'm scratching my head now. I checked it out as far as I could find. I came up with nothing. Is there an underground drinking water hold in the vicinity of that potential well site?
Yeah, but it's about a kilometer, I think, or more to the west of the site. So there's an underground reservoir, obviously in a concrete case, which is water underground reservoir that's been there for a number of years.
So not exactly a threat, I wouldn't think.
It's hopefully far enough away that any oil well wouldn't cause a problem.
Because here's what I'm getting. I think there's a lot of concerns that are simply unfounded. I think there's probably some legitimate concerns as well. Ward, your people in your area, what's their take on the water issue?
Well, right now, as it stands, let's get the facts straight. The well was approved for an exploratory well. He's looking for sweet oil. It's an exploratory well. There's, like I mentioned, there's numerous people in the oil and gas industry. They've all looked through the information. We have geologists, we have fracking specialists. And by the way, when we're talking drilling, they will be fracking. They said they were going to be fracking. So the chemicals coming in, they will be trucking the oil. It's not going through a pipeline, so it's going to be trucked in, trucked out, that type of thing. As you know, we have the gravel pits. They have hundreds and hundreds of trucks a day. So you're talking thousands of trucks coming through the same road where there's oil trucks, etc. And we just had an accident in August with one of the trucks. So even if they do their job properly, you know, one of these trucks could ram into it. There could be all these different circumstances. Yet the ERCB that says everything's completely safe, we don't need an emergency response plan. Well, that's ludicrous that they don't need one, because these things can happen. Nothing is 100%.
That's very true. Nothing is 100%.
Factually, too, when the application was done from Kaiser, the depth of when it's going to be drilled was changed several times. Well, if everything's 100%, why was it changed? We have people in our community, like I said, that are in the industry. They've looked at the facts and they said nothing is 100%. They work for oil companies. They go to drill and they say, yes, it's going to be sweet well, it's 100%, and they find out it's going to be gas, etc. The basic principle is, the fact is, there's no policy for urban drilling. It's too close to the community. It's too close to businesses. We don't want it there. The community doesn't want it there. The people that work in oil and gas don't want it that close. We didn't expect that. The original plan for that land, that Crown land, was not for an oil well. It's for infrastructure, for the city. And then it was turned over for an oil well. It was pushed into an oil well through Alberta Infrastructure, through the ERCB. So there was a lot of circumstances where it seems okay, but it's not. There were a lot of policies that weren't followed, and that's the issue at hand. It's not safe. The policies aren't followed.
We
There's a
followed
lot
the
there. Yes, go
policies
ahead.
to the letter. We exceeded the policies. We went to the neighborhood. We did
followed
not have to
the policies,
consult
the
with the
RCB did.
neighborhood. We went to the neighborhood. We went to every store in the shopping center and told them what we were doing. We went well beyond the 100 meters. We exceeded in every way the
What about
regulations.
trucks? Is it pipe or is it going to be trucks?
Well, it could be either one.
Are you fracking?
We don't know, Ward. Until
You
you
said
drill
you
the
were
well,
fracking. What
until
about
you
the
drill the
trucks? I'd
well,
like
you
to
don't,
know.
you
So
know.
at the meeting in front of 500 people, you said you were fracking. So are you fracking or not fracking?
I said, it depends.
So you're going to change your story?
No, I'm not
according
going to
the
change my
thing?
story. I may frack. I'm not going to say I'm not going to frack.
It sounds like it's still
So
up,
the
it's still up
trucks.
to you. I want to
here's
know
the
about
other thing we
infrastructure-wise
committed to.
and
So
residents in the area.
We're
Yes.
only going to bring trucks in from the north on 85th Avenue. We're not going to go anywhere near the neighborhood. We've committed to that in writing, on paper. We may have 2 trucks a day. If we have a big oil well, we might have 2 trucks come out there. Like he says, there's hundreds of gravel trucks running up and down that road and going into the neighborhood on Country Hills. We're not going to do that. We committed not to do that. We're going to come from the north. And this is an industrial area. If you've been out there, or I don't know if you had a chance to, but you look at the pictures, this is an open field in an industrial area between a correctional center, a gravel pit, a high-tension power line, and the backside of Walmart.
Yep.
Completely screened from view, far away from the residential community.
For 3 wells, is that correct?
We could add additional wells.
So we're not talking 1, we're talking 3, so we're talking more trucks, we're talking more fracking, et cetera. So, you know, you talk about community engagement, you hired a company. You didn't engage, you hired a company. The company didn't do the proper engagement. We filed a legal submission to the RCB that it wasn't done correctly. We didn't have the proper opportunity. The proper information wasn't given. In fact, the person that went out to say that they've done their job to all the businesses didn't know they were fracking, didn't know there was going to be 3 wells. So, you know, let's tell the truth. Let's talk about the facts.
It's only the government
I just
does
want to
agree
talk
with
about
your
facts,
opinion.
not influence.
Anyway.
It needed
We're
to
not
be
talking facts.
clearly. There's more exploration required, hence why it's in the hands of the Alberta government right now. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. If you have any questions, please give us a call. You know the number. Thanks. Stay with us.
The notion of natural resource development within city limits, within 100 meters of homes, is problematic at best, disastrous at worst. It's something that apparently the province is working on, but it's going to have to be more transparent between the province, the city, and citizens. This is something that's going to happen, and hopefully between sprawl condensing, resources being less reliant, we can come to something.
You know what? It's one of those things that's really hard to come up with a compromise about. I just came back from BC actually, and there was a protest when I was there about the Exxon pipeline that they're trying to bring over to Vancouver. There's already pipelines there, but whenever you bring this up and it's going into somebody's backyard, it's a sensitive topic. I think in time there will be a compromise reached, but nobody's going to want this in their backyard. And who can really blame them? It's been banned in a bunch of other provinces and states. You know, we all benefit from oil, but who's got to pay the price? It's hard to say.
Hey, Calgary, welcome back. Tonight we're discussing oil wells in the suburbs. Now, Dale, I want to know, what's the city's take on the whole fiasco? Emergency response plan-wise, what does the city need to see?
Well, there's been emergency response plans laid out for the areas near the sour gas wells way out in the northeast edge of the city, east and adjacent to 84th Street northeast. And the fire department have looked at those plans and give their approval if they think they make sense. It would just simply be prudent to have an emergency response plan. You can never tell what's really going to happen in the future, so an emergency response plan should have been required.
So, Ned, is there no emergency response plan currently?
Not only is there an emergency response plan for Kaiser, we have a corporate one for all of our wells. But in this instance, we made a site-specific emergency response plan that included the city emergency responders, the secured facilities that we have out here, because there's 4 secured facilities, a correctional center, and right near us is the forensic center. So we went to those institutions and said, here's what we're doing. We need a plan to communicate. It was agreed that any kind of communication with the city at large would be through city emergency responders.
So it sounds like there's...
that the institutions would do their own sheltering in place, whatever. But we have one, we have not fully executed because names change and all this. But it does not include the residents because there's no circumstance under which we could ever see.
Well, you've talked to the fire department, it sounds
Oh,
like.
you betcha. And the police department. All the emergency responders.
They're...
I've never seen it.
No.
And these are not made public
Yeah.
because there's private information within these plans. That's why in general they're not made public. It's part of the Privacy Act. We're looking at redacting it, but again, until we're ready to proceed, we're not going to make public this emergency response.
Is this a document you can get your hands on, you think, Bill?
Well, probably I'd have to FOIP it. It'd be an interesting exercise to try to FOIP it, but if I don't know anything about it, you know, 99.9% of the public don't know anything about it either.
So, but we've said this all along. We've said it in writing, we've said it in person.
It sounds like it might be, I'm not going to tell you how to run your company, but it's probably not a bad idea to maybe promote that a little bit more to curb some of these area residents' concerns. Another concern I want to talk about, noise pollution, Ward. Is it a real concern amongst your residents?
Well, when you look at different wells, I mean, there's some wells that are a few kilometers away outside where the fields are. And we had several residents that live out there that were at the meeting, and they expressed their concern that they get smells, and it's not supposed to have smells, but they get it depending on the winds, that type of thing. The noise, mostly the noise, depending on what type of pump you're going to use in that. It's not overly loud, but you know, the overall issue is the safety. The area that's around with it, whether it's conducive. I know in the States, like some of the commercials said, there's places where there's oil wells very close, but a lot of those places like Beverly Hills that allowed it for the last 20 years has now said it was the biggest mistake they ever did, that they found that there were health issues and it was bad for the environment, and admitted they shouldn't have done it. So we haven't learned from this. Like I said, you know, we're not against the oil industry. I think there just needs to be different plans for urban policies in terms of proper setbacks, proper distances, and proper plans.
You touched on an interesting point, though. I mean, that's just that these well sites have existed in densely populated urban areas for years, decades, in fact. As a matter of fact, I think we've got a graphic. If we can throw it up there when you guys have a moment up there. I know you're busy. There is a graphic I'd like to show. It shows a couple of well sites in, I believe, Los Angeles, California. There we go. I mean, that's about as urban as it gets. And if you look, the way it's been decorated, I thought this was striking. The way it's been decorated, it's almost aesthetically pleasing, one could argue. Now, I know some area residents are concerned that it will be an eyesore. I mean, as Ned alluded to, it sounds like it's fairly hidden regardless. You can take that down. Thank you. Are you using a noisy pump? Is noise pollution?
We're not going to use a noisy pump. We use very quiet pumps these days. And I don't think noise pollution is going to be an issue. It has not been a great issue. The safety issue is a thing that keeps coming up. And
what's the main thing?
And I don't.
Is it the emergency response or is it the H2S? What's the big concern you're hearing about?
They throw everything at it. The opponents of this, they don't like fracking. They don't like any of it. They just don't want it. And they can say they support the oil business, but then you're a NIMBY. I mean, it's just as simple as that. If you don't like this well because it's too close to your neighborhood, then you're just a NIMBY. If it's okay to have an oil well in the country, 100 meters from a farmer's house, it's okay to have an oil well in the city, in a perfectly situated site, 400 meters from the nearest resident, completely shielded by view.
It's hard to argue that. I mean, as an outside observer, hearing that and seeing those pictures.
It's easy to argue it. First of all, I can tell you there's lots of farmers that don't like it. They didn't get a choice. The government forced it right beside their house. Secondly is saying there's no issues. Like, I mean, if we want a trust factor, from the statements that Ned have made from when we've had meetings, et cetera, until we say on TV today, vary all the time. So it's just like an oil well. Which part is the truth? Which part is the facts? It depends when we're talking about and which day it is with Ned, because he seems to be telling different stories all the time.
One genuinely, I think there's a lot of hyperbole going on. I do think, though, there is some genuine concerns here. I've done a bit of research, guys. I didn't come, you know, empty-handed. I think property values is something we haven't touched on yet, and actually, the study that I saw showed that rigs that are within 4 kilometers of homes, the property values actually dip 4 to 16%.
Now we're talking sour gas wells. That study was regarding
Is that
sour
right?
gas
Okay,
wells.
okay.
And that study has not been published other than an abstract form that I could find.
That was done
So-
from the Alberta. That was done by the University of Alberta in Wilford.
That's right.
And it was done in any urban area, regardless of whether or not it's a gas or sour, that the prices go down. Unlike the different areas where there's one functioning well in Calgary right now, in Aaronwood's in an industrial area. The wells that were there before are shut in. The houses were already there. So it didn't affect the price. As a resident, you go in, you know the well's there, you pay the price of the house, there's no issue. This was done on Crown land that was made for infrastructure. Our residents didn't know that. We didn't have those choices, so it is going to affect the prices. In fact, at the meeting in front of 500 people, when Ned was asked if he could man up and pay the difference, he said, well, that's what I pay my royalties for. Ask the government for the money difference.
And again, this is out of sight of any of these residences. Nobody can see it. It's completely shielded. So I don't know how something that's invisible is going to affect your property value. That's completely safe, never been proven otherwise, despite what Ward says. There's no evidence that a sweet oil well is any kind of menace like he makes it out to be.
Let me throw a hypothetical at you.
Okay?
Let's say the well proceeds, and we're 2 years down the road, and property values are dropping, and it is due to that. That's what buyers are saying. I don't want to buy there. It's due to this well site. Is there any possibility of a conversation that would see potentially some revenue sharing to those residents?
Boy, that'd be hard. You're very speculative there, because I mean, these people, this neighborhood is right next to 4 secured facilities. It's got a high-pressure gas line running right down it. There's gravel trucks going through the main intersection, and you're going to sort out the impact of 1 or 4 wells on that. I don't know how you can sort that out. I really don't have any idea how you could possibly sort that out.
It'd be simple enough to sort out property values. So.
Is that, please elaborate.
The city looks at assessments every year, and assessments are based on what is called fair market value. So given those surveys are done every year, you could soon determine what the difference was, say, from 2013 to 2015 in terms of property value.
So that's how it works. There's a survey that's, because I own property, I've never seen these surveys.
Well, you have to check.
I guess I do, yeah. So you're saying that potentially it could be pinpointed as to why these property values are decreasing?
No, the range of properties where values, should they drop, the range of properties could easily be identified. And we're talking that north end of Royal Oak and possibly the edge of Rocky Ridge.
Well, what was interesting, Kevin, is during this whole process over the last year, because it's dragged out for over a year, we constantly got emails from 5 or 6 realtors. And the number one question when people were looking to buy properties was, well, what's happening with the oil well? So it was interesting. They weren't asking about, you know, the gravel pits. The gravel pits have been there for years. People know it's there. So why weren't they asking about, are the gravel pits going away? But they were asking about the well. So it was interesting to know that.
So I think the neighborhood, by making such a big fuss about this, has caused the property values probably to go down already just by making it such a big issue. They probably, by causing all this and bringing attention to some of these other aspects of it, have probably caused it themselves.
I think that's, there's potential, yeah. I mean,
it's
that's
a nice neighborhood.
One quick last question. It's unbelievable how time flies. Where's the compromise here? Where's the compromise here? Is it directional drilling? What are we looking for?
Move the well further north, which is what Kaiser are looking at doing, into a gravel pit site, potentially about a half a kilometer or maybe a little more to the north.
And what Kaiser does, our policy is always to go where the landowner wants us. And when we went with Alberta Infrastructure, we looked at, I think, 12 different well sites. This was the one that the landowner wanted. So now we're going to where they didn't want. We're trying to get into the gravel pit where they don't want us, but that could be a compromise. If Alberta Infrastructure, I know Sandra Jansen and Minister Hughes and others are working to try to find a compromise. They're working hard.
About right to you?
Well, the spot right now is not satisfactory for the residents, and we think there's a lot better appropriate areas, and that should be dealt with Bill 7 and the urban policy.
Fair enough. I got to cut you off, folks. Our half hour is nearly up. After this quick break, we'll wrap it up and ask our always entertaining random question. Stay with us.
Just on a purely visceral level, the idea of having a pump jack in a residential community seems super bizarre to me. Like, all of the other stuff aside, safety, health, noise, potential for catastrophe. It just seems a very strange place to put an oil well. And the other thing I guess I sort of am reacting to here is, why is it that the city and the province would allow an oil well in somebody's backyard or Walmart's backyard and not 3 chickens? I don't get it. It just seems that the rights and the things that pertain to citizens and things that citizens want that are safe and obviously useful, like your own food, are not allowed, and then the needs of giant corporations override everything. Like, no matter what, we're going to put an oil well in somebody's backyard. It's weird.
Welcome back. We're going to jump right into our random question wrap-up. Now, the way this works, guys, I've got no idea what's on these pieces of paper. Mind you, I can nearly see through that one there. Ward, I'm going to let you pick a question, hand it back to me, I'll ask it, and we'll all weigh in. Thank you, sir. What's your favorite thing about the holidays? How are you getting into the Christmas spirit? Dale, what do you think?
You get a break for about 10 days to 2 weeks. You get away from a constant series of meetings, day and night, and dealing with issues the public bring before you. And so it's a time when you do get a break and things usually slow down.
Little R&R.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it's all the activities in the community. Everybody's pretty friendly, and you get together at different houses and community events and that type of stuff. It's a lot of fun, and it's great to meet some neighbors and be with people.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm going to add to all that, I also like this time of year, the snow looks good, and the lights, the cheer, all that. So on top of what they said, I agree with both. Well, we got full agreement here.
It's time off and cognac, guys. That's all it is all about, isn't it? Yeah. Folks, we want to thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we've shed some light on what is indeed an important issue. As always, we want to hear from you. We welcome you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Next week we'll be discussing traffic. As always, this promises to be a lively discussion. Take care.